This episode of Harvey Brownstone Interviews is brought to you by the Harvey Brownstone Talk Show Blend Coffee, available at hollywoodblends.com. Everyone's saying it's the best coffee they've ever tasted. Why not give it a try and see for yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Harvey Brownstone, and today's guest is an actor, filmmaker, educator, addiction counselor, and humanitarian whom we all grew up watching and loving on the classic TV series Family Affair, on which he portrayed Jody, the brother of Buffy, and Cissy, portrayed by Anissa Jones and Kathy Garver, and co-starring Brian Keith and Sebastian Cabot. But beyond that iconic role, our guest appeared in the 1966 movie The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming. He originated the role of Scotty Baldwin on General Hospital. He starred in the 1973 musical version of Tom Sawyer, and he starred in 5 Walt Disney films: The Littlest Angel, Snowball Express, The Biscuit Eater, Napoleon and Samantha, and The Magic Pony. He also starred in the Sid and Marty Krofft Saturday morning TV show, Sigmund and the Sea Monsters, and he appeared as Zach in the 2016 reboot of the series. He guest starred in many iconic TV shows, including Bonanza, Bewitched, Green Acres, Gunsmoke, Marcus Welby, Adam 12, and many others. He played Santa Claus in the highly acclaimed TV movie A Husband for Christmas, and most recently, he played the Bishop in the TV series The Last Evangelist. After overcoming his own struggles with substance abuse, our guest became certified as an addiction counselor and advocate, in addition to writing, directing, teaching, and acting. He actually wrote, directed, and executive produced a compelling documentary showcasing Portugal's groundbreaking treatment of drug addicts, which focuses on rehabilitation rather than punitive criminal prosecution, making Portugal a world leader in positive change in drug policy. In 1999, our guest received the former Child Star Lifetime Achievement Award from the Youth in Film Awards. I am delighted to welcome Johnny Whitaker to our show. John, thank you so much for being here.
I'm glad to be here. Boy, it sounds like I'm important.
Well, you certainly are beloved and very important to those of us who grew up watching you. You started acting professionally in commercials at the age of 3. By the age of 7, you were co-starring in a hit TV series, Family Affair.
Yes, co-starring Brian Keith and Sebastian Cabot. Actually, they were the stars. Back in my day, kids never really got starring roles. They were always co-stars. Even when I did Napoleon and Samantha, Jody Foster and I was Napoleon, Jody was Samantha, but Michael Douglas got the starring billing along with the adults, and we were co-stars. Luckily, that's changed a little in the last 40, 50 years.
Yeah, well, did your desire to be an actor originate with you, or were your parents pushing you to get involved in it?
You know, I don't remember a time when I was not in front of the cameras. So growing up, it was just a part of my life. My best friend, David Chambers, every weekend he would come to my house or I would go to his house. And when I was doing Family Affair, they needed kids in the schoolroom and in Central Park. And I said, well, why don't we get David to come with us? So I got him a job. That was what was normal for me. Waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning, getting in the car by 7, going to the studio, being there by 8 o'clock, going into school, going onto the set, going back to school, going onto the set, and then having an hour lunch, then going back on the set, back to school. That was normal for me. And so I don't really know what normal is.
Did you ever take acting lessons as a kid?
I never took acting lessons as a child. The producers of Family Affair asked my mother if I had any intentions of or had done any. Oh, I'm so sorry. No, don't. Please make sure that he doesn't have any any professional training because it would deter from his natural abilities. So I never did. However, after I returned from my mission to Portugal for the LDS Church, I went back to school, started learning what I had kind of learned already, but now I had actual handles as far as names to put to a an acting exercise. And so that's when I started having real acting professional classes.
You know, John, we've had a lot of child stars on our show, like Billy Mooney, Angela Cartwright, Paul Peterson, Butch Patrick, Barry Williams, Christopher Atkins, Darby Hinton, so many. And there's a special
Friends of mine.
bond. There's a special bond that all child actors have because of what you've all been through. But from my conversations, I would say the single most important factor in determining how well a child actor is going to adjust to adulthood is the parents, what kind of parenting they got. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I am one of 8 children. I'm the only one of the 8 that was successful to a certain point in entertainment. My younger sister and my younger brother both did voiceovers and were actors as well. But for me, it was the family bonds that we had to make sure that we were always together, that we were always, well, when I did the movie Tom Sawyer, I did not want to do the movie. I wanted, well, my parents had insisted that I do what the other young boys did in my scout troop, which was to go and get the money for my scout camp by selling greeting cards. And so I went around town, around my little city there in San Fernando, California, knocking on doors. And my friends, you know, all thought that it was cool and got my $300 for scout camp. Well, I get to, pay my money that I worked for. That wasn't money that I made in television or films. And then I go on the audition for Tom Sawyer and they say, "You got it." And I say, "I don't have it." "What do you mean?" "I don't want it. I'm supposed to be in Boy Scout camp the same time." And so now my parents thought that, kind of backfired on them. And so we made a deal that I would go to 3 days of scout camp. They would come and pick me up in a limousine at scout camp, take me back to the LA airport, which was going to be about a 2.5 hour drive, and that my family would follow in the station wagon and we would all live together in central western Missouri, and all of them had roles in the movie.
You mentioned money. Is it true that your parents spent all the money you earned as a child?
Let's just say that my family was well taken care of by the work that my father did. He was a middle school teacher, did it for 35 years faithfully, not missing any days really, unless he was very, very ill. And my income, which was triple his income, definitely helped the family stay in a financial situation that made it more comfortable for the family. So my parents didn't, it was a family affair. The money went to everyone. When I turned 18, the state of California mandates that any child working in the industry have, well, now it is any child working in the industry that I helped make a law in the state of California with Paul Peterson and others. But before 2000, it was only on series or long-term contracts. And since Sigmund and the Sea Monsters and Family Affair were long-term series contracts, a portion of that money was set aside. Any other, and then when I turned 18, I got that. And it wasn't a whole lot, but it, was close to about $100,000, which is quite a bit for an 18-year-old, but it paled in comparison to the $2.5 million that I had made over the last 14 years. My parents chose not to invest the money except in a few things that, as I got older, I saw and I had asked, and they did, which was an avocado farm in San Diego, a couple of other smaller investments. Some investments went feet up, but when I turned 18, the only money that I saw was the 100,000 that I had made, that the state of California mandated to be saved.
That's really not okay.
Today, I agree. At the time, I was, I guess, complacent and thinking that my parents were doing the best that they could. They were not geniuses in finance or anything. I know that when I did the Disney movies, there was a coworker who was 20 years older than I, who had said, "Hey, Johnny, did you know that Disney is giving 1-for-1 stock options?" And I thought, what's a stock option? And he says, well, you pay $1 to Disney, and Disney gives you $2 worth of their stock. And I said, oh, that sounds smart. So I went to my mom and dad and I said, Mom, Dad, let's put half of the money for my next film into Disney stock, in stock options, and then I'll get another half, so I'll get the whole amount in Disney stock. And they said, oh, no, stock is a volatile thing, and it's gambling with your money. We're not going to gamble with your money. Well, in 1971, Disney stock was at 99 cents a share. Putting $7,500 into Disney stock would have given me 15,000 shares of Disney stock in 1971. Today, that stock would be worth more than $50 million.
Yeah, that's hard to swallow. Do you remember the first time you realized you were famous?
That must have been in Memphis, Tennessee, when Anissa and I, both of us I was 8 years old. We had the Jody line of clothes, and she had the Buffy line of clothes. And we were in Memphis, Tennessee, doing a fashion show with the summer collection or whatever. And we had done a morning talk show that morning. And the news people were there when we landed the plane. But, it was just United Airlines or whatever with everybody else. We were first class, of course. But, my mother, Anissa's mother, Anissa, myself, and our school teacher, we all got off the plane and waved. And, it was a big deal at that time. Anyway, when we got to the venue, which was a mall in Memphis, there were 25,000 people there waiting to see Buffy and Jody. And, I had been recognized all over the place. I'd already been doing the tours with the clothing for at least a year and a half. But this time I saw throngs of people and little kids getting smashed up against the guardrails and saying, "Wait a minute, please step back, step back." But that was the first time that I recognized that there were a whole lot of people who liked me.
Although Family Affair is commonly referred to as a sitcom, there were a lot of episodes that were quite poignant and emotional, and you often had to portray sadness. There was the episode where you were wrongly accused of breaking a window at school. There were a few episodes where you felt left out and engaged in attention-seeking behavior. Did you find it easy, John, as a child, to portray anxiousness and dejection?
From Sebastian Cabot and Brian Keith, I had some great teachers of acting. Now, I didn't know until I became an adult what some of those handles, what I would call, so that I could use them on another situation or another role were. But the actor acts. And what that means is he or she does what it says in the script. And when you know the role, when you know the lines, the emotion just comes. I didn't have to act, I did. And, that's when I teach my classes with kids or adults, that's the center point of me being the teacher is just do it. What I do is I just tell the adults or the kids to just do it, to not worry about all these things in the background. Of course, you want to have the backstory so that you understand why this character is doing or saying what they're doing. But once you have your backstory, once you know basically the lines, and the director is there giving you good direction, then it just happens. And that's kind of the magic of television, of acting, of film.
Well, it made you very relatable. It made all of us want to protect you. We all loved you. I wanted you to be my little brother. I know, John, that you spoke with Brian Keith 3 days before he committed suicide, and you've talked about how you believe Brian Keith saved your life from beyond the grave when you were in a car accident. That's really an incredible experience that you had. I'm wondering if you've ever had any others experiences like that.
Just so that our audience understands, 3 days before Brian passed, and I believe that he met the Grim Reaper. The Grim Reaper didn't come to get him. And he was that kind of a man. He also had a full Catholic funeral. And to my understanding, if you commit suicide, it's a major sin. So I think he'd already talked to his priest about what might happen. So, and yes, he shot himself, but I don't believe it was necessarily suicide. It was, I'm going to meet the Grim Reaper. But 3 days before he passed, I of course got all of these calls from publicity, news outlets wanting to know my reaction. I pick up the cell phone, and I'm looking down to pick up the phone. And as I look forward, all the cars are stopped. And so I slam on the brakes and my car starts swerving. And as it swerves, I'm swerving and moving straight into, do it this way, a semi coming this way. And I'm going straight toward the semi, and my head's going to get chopped off. And I hear Brian's voice say, "Cover." And those are the words that any stuntman knows to cover, duck, and roll. So I said, God, Bryant, I'm in your hands. I covered my head. I ducked down. I rolled to the side right as I smashed into this truck. And I was then swerved around, and it was Brian that saved me. Other situations like that, near death experiences, I've not had, thank goodness, but it was one where I realized that I'm Christian and believe very much that Jesus died for our sins, and on the third day he was risen and resurrected, and that all of us will do the same. And so with that, I just realized, wow, the veil between that life and this life is very thin. And I've had experiences with smaller, not as grandiose as that, but just realizing that this life is not all there is.
Oh, that is for sure. I want to ask you about Kathy Garver. In 2002, you and Kathy appeared in the Christmas episode of the reboot of Family Affair. And then I watched an episode of Oprah's show called Where Are They Now? And they filmed you going to Kathy Garver's house, and you apologized to her for what you referred to as bad blood between you. What was that all about?
She had gotten me some gigs, some, doing some paid, some not paid, professional interviews, talk shows, game shows where we appeared together and separately. And I did not know that she was behind them all. So Kathy and I were guests for the TV Land Awards, and we were the ones who would bring out the awards to those who won them. And it was a magical night, and it was wonderful, and there were lots of big stars. And of course, Kathy and I were there, but we didn't really say anything, just a welcome. During one of the breaks, I went to Kathy and I said, Kathy, I know that this was all because of you. And this was one of the most wonderful nights that I've had in a very long time. And I want to thank you. And she says, well, finally. I thought, I'm sorry, what? You're finally recognizing what I've done for the last 5, 10 years. He said, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that. And she had not been very nice to me and didn't tell me why. And when the producers of the Oprah show asked me to surprise Kathy, I said, well, I don't know if that's a good idea. And they said, what do you mean? I said, well, I don't think Kathy will be pleasantly surprised. I think it will not be positive. And they go, why? And I kind of explained why. And now the TV Land Awards were passed, at least 3 to 5 years passed. So I just kind of warned them what was going to happen. And they said, well, we'll try it anyway. So when we got to the door, she did not invite me in the home, but the crew that was behind me kind of pushed me into the house. And so then she, on camera, was not very nice. And I said, stop. We're not going to continue with this. Kathy doesn't look good. I don't look good. This is not acceptable. And so they redid it, knocking at the door, and she let me in, and we did the scene that you see. And unfortunately, to this day, she has not really forgiven me. And I care about her. I love her. I would be very happy to take photos with fans at fan events and all of that. But it is my experience that she does not want to do that. And so, I allow her to do what she does and I do what I do. And the two of us don't meet. And, it's sad for our fans and those who like the show, but that's the choice of one person, at least as I see it. And, she's not a young person, and I don't think she's going to change. So I just give it to God and, bless her and only wish the best for her.
Well, thank you for clarifying that because I found that scene in the Oprah show inexplicably obtuse. It did not look right to me. It did look like exactly what you described happened. That's what it looked like. And I feel badly. We've had Kathy on the show, and she only speaks wonderfully about you and everyone she worked with on the show. I wonder when you watch an episode of Family Affairs nowadays, what goes through your mind?
That's a cute kid. Boy, he's a good actor. It's semi surreal that it's not me, nephew, grandchild, somebody that is not me. Sometimes I can get through a whole episode and just get into the show. Sometimes I remember things that went on behind the scenes, but most of the time it's just real positive.
How does it feel when you attend Comic-Con events, autograph shows, and fans come up to you and they tell you how much you meant to them when you were a kid? What does that feel like?
Well, it's a wonderful feeling that you have a place in their heart, a place in their lives, and it's a wonderful feeling.
John, I want to clear something up, which I think is a big misconception about TV stars like yourself from the 60s and 70s. A lot of people think you got very rich from residuals, but that's not true, is it?
Up until 1971, SAG's Screen Actors Guild rules were that you got paid through the 10th showing of any commercial, any series, whatever television episode. And after that, in ad nauseum, they could show that episode. So after the 10th episode of all of Family Affair, some of the others, because we have now got different venues like on streaming services and all of that, those were not in at the time. So we will get some monies from streaming and all of that, but not a great deal.
And what about all the DVD sales?
DVD sales as well. That's part of the new media, as it's called. So yeah, we do get that.
Well, you sure deserve it. And I'm glad that you make yourself available at these fan shows because it's a way of getting residuals in a way, isn't it?
To a certain extent, yeah. That's kind of one of the things that we say.
Now, I got to tell you, I was a huge fan of Sigmund and the Sea Monsters. I'm dying to know what was Rip Taylor like off camera?
Hello.
Was he really like that off camera?
100%. And we were friends up to his passing. And wonderful man, heart as big as gold, and part of the old Hollywood regime. And I was honored to be his friend.
I want to ask you, John, when we had Billy Mooney on the show, he said that when he grew up and he would meet fans, he felt that they were disappointed. They kind of resented him for growing up. Did you ever feel that way?
Not necessarily, but Christopher Knight said it best, and he was Peter Brady. He said, Hollywood loves puppies, but when they become a lapdog, they don't like you anymore. And that's kind of the way that it was. And that's kind of the way that many, I look like Santa Claus's brother. So I don't look like Jody anymore.
Is that deliberate?
Well, it's actually because I'm planning a film where it's called Sky Blue. I'm filming it this summer. I am playing a white supremacist who finds that he is the only surviving relative to his mixed race granddaughter. And I wrote it along with my best friend and co-writer, D. Bryant Liggins. And we're going to be filming it in around Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina this summer. And my co-star is also a former child actress, but we don't have the contracts made, so I'm not going to make any names yet, but really excited about that.
Well, when that
And
movie comes out, I hope you'll come back on our show to promote it.
will do. And you can show some snips of it. And my 65th year, I'm throwing out 3 Hail Mary passes. One is this film, another is I'm writing my memoirs, and the third is the Portuguese film, which isn't out yet, but I'm hoping to get it completed this year, or at least get it ready for completion.
I'm very excited to hear about these projects because that's 3 more times I can get you on the show. I want to go back, though, for a moment. Many former child stars have told me something that relates to what you said about not being a puppy anymore. They said that they spent a great deal of time during their adolescence worrying that they wouldn't get work as adults because they weren't kids anymore. Did you feel that way growing up?
Well, I was extremely lucky and fortunate that I continued working past Family Affair, past Sigmund and the Sea Monsters, till I was Sigmund ended when I was 15, and I continued to work till I was 17. Then at 16, Anissa Jones died of a drug overdose, and that caught me by surprise. And I then went on a mission for the Mormon faith, LDS Church, to Portugal. When I came back, well, before I left, my plan was to go into the international realm of US government. I spoke French, learned with Jody Foster, and my father had taught us Spanish. So I was fairly versed in Spanish and French, and I wanted to be in the foreign service. But when I came back from my mission, I felt a calling to go back into show business. And that's when I took the classes from a wonderful teacher, Tad Danielewski, who worked with lots of big stars.
Well, for a while, weren't you Dana Plato's manager?
I was. My sister continues for the last, goodness, almost 30 years being an agent and manager. And at one point, her children's department had some rearranging, and people who were in charge of that left. And she asked if I would come and help her. And I said I would. And I asked her about seeing if I could bring on any other people. At the time, the way that most film and television jobs are recognized is through what's called breakdown services, or a breakdown of the script that the casting director has, the different roles. And what they do is they send them out to all of the managers and agents. And the quest for Dana Plato was one of them. And I had known Dana. I did a couple of talk shows with her. And so I was able to get her phone number and called her up and asked her if she had representation and that there was a film that someone was looking for her. And so I was able to get her that audition. She did not get that role, but I had a couple of other roles. And when she passed that summer, she was going to be doing a summer stock play. I think it was a 2 or 3 person play. And she purchased a Winnebago that she and her son would follow the cast and crew with the play. And that's the Winnebago that she passed in. She had kind of gone missing for a couple of weeks, came back, and then she did a blue movie expo, and which I was telling her that it's best that she try to do her best to stay away from all of that, but she needed to make some money, so she did. So after she did the blue movie expo, she went to New York to do the Howard Stern show. And Howard Stern asked her to do a urine analysis to prove that she was sober. Embarrassed her. Many people called in and demeaned her, derailed her, and she went back home to Oklahoma and fell into a deep depression and used and overdosed and died. And her boyfriend at the time, instead of calling 911, he videotaped her last breaths and gurgling. And I to this day, I don't understand. But unfortunately, 11 years to the day that she passed, her son Tyler shot himself in a drug-induced rage. And it was a very, very sad ending to a beautiful young lady, a beautiful girl who was very troubled. And, you know, we will always remember her with love. And once a year, I celebrate my nonprofit organization called Paso por Paso. We celebrate lives lost and lives recovered. And this year, 2025, we will celebrate it on September 13th, on Saturday. We'll have a Zoom meeting like this. And we remember the lives of famous and infamous and not famous individuals. But unfortunately, I have 10 friends and family of mine who have died of drugs or alcohol overdoses.
So there
And
you
so,
are, John. You were stunned by the death of Anissa Jones, who was your colleague and friend. You saw the incredible impact of the death of Dana Plato, which really shocked the world. And you've been very open about discussing your own struggles with substance abuse. You said publicly that you deliberately chose to go to the other side, as you called it, because of the trauma you endured, especially your divorce, the suicide of your girlfriend, which caused you to lose the baby she was carrying. John, when you look back at that time in your life, was there anything that anyone could have said or done that could have prevented you from descending into addiction?
gosh, that's a good question. There are 4 places, 4 reasons people become addicts, or that it is more pronounced. One is that it's become normalized within your own family, friends, your circle. 2 is the propensity that you might have. I mean, I've got 1,000 years of Irish whiskey in this blood. So when I went onto the dark side, I was able to drink most people under the table. And then there is trauma. And when people go through any type of trauma, that is a big red flag that there could be and can be other situations that would come from it. And that's the way that I look at it. And then feelings of not being the same as other people, not being welcomed. And we see that, myself kind of being shunned by some of my normal friends. I had a lot of very good normal friends, but other people not being accepted. And also groups of people like the Native American population, 600 years being forced onto reservations and into the poorest areas of the countries, and First Nations people. And then we have African Americans, 500 years that they were enslaved populations. And then the 1960s and 70s slowly being put back into normal society. And there are certain areas, my film Sky Blue is one of them, that shows that there is still some racism in the world today. And, the LGBTQ2IA population, it is 75 times more likely for a trans woman to commit suicide than her brother or sister that are not LGBTQ2IA. So when we're not accepted by any reason, those are the 4 reasons that people go into addiction or can fall into addiction. And for me, I guess I had 3 of them: not being invited to certain things, going through that trauma, and having a history in my culture. My family, of course, my family culture is LDS, Mormon, and alcohol and drugs are verboten. Another thing, I'm a mental health counselor, so I'm going to use some mental health counseling lingo. There are also 4 reasons that a young person needs to go through to become a healthy adult. And as a child actor, I did not go through those areas of healthy transition. I had a position. I didn't have to seek for a job. I had one given to me. My peer group was 15, 20 years older than I. Seeking and finding your sexual self is one of those. And I had not, growing up LDS, you don't have any sex with anybody until you're legally and lawfully wed. But when I had some trauma, I fell into that and then went kind of crazy on that end. And then rebelling against authority, I believe that my going into drugs and alcohol was one of the ways in which I rebelled against authority. With that trauma, and it kind of all meshed together to bring me there. So, and I believe that everything happens for a reason. As my drug and alcohol counseling professor taught us, everything is everything.
Well, you've been clean and sober for 30 years.
27 years.
So almost 30 years. What would you say was the key for you to overcoming your addiction?
Getting smart. It's stupid to hurt your body and to do the things that we do to our bodies. Cognitive behavioral therapy is recognizing that you're hurting yourself. I also believe that 15% of the population have a problem with drugs or alcohol. 85% don't. If you've never had any of those 4 situations in your life, there are a lot of people who can smoke marijuana and do it with ease and put it away. And then there are people like myself who 27 years later smell some badass weed and think, damn, that smells good. But that's part of my limbic system brain, the brain that has this recording of all the good feelings that happened 27 years ago. But today I am able to laugh at it and go, wow, you are an addict. You know, I believe through my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, I am saved from all of my evilness and bad things that I did during and after being a drug dealer and a drug addict. But I do believe that it is still within my DNA, the fact that I am an addict alcoholic, and that I have to be always aware of that fact. If you are not part of that 15%, then you really don't have to worry as much. But you can wobble back and forth between that 15 to 85%, depending on different things that happen in your life.
Well, you devoted a great deal of your life as a drug and alcohol counselor, helping people overcome their substance abuse addictions. And you've been a strong advocate for the decriminalization of drug use in the way that Portugal has done it. John, I don't know how much you know about me, but I spent 26 years as a criminal and family court judge. Did you know that?
I did not. I'm sorry that I did not look that much up about your information. I
Well,
need to know more about you.
before launching this show, I was a judge for 26 years and then I retired. I mentioned this because I want you to know that I strongly agree with your position regarding how the justice system should be dealing with drug addicts, because I know firsthand that sending drug addicts to jail accomplishes absolutely nothing. They need treatment and recovery programs, not jail. They are not criminals, they are addicts. And I'd love you to take a moment and tell us about the work of your nonprofit organization, Paso por Paso,
Exactly. Now, where may I ask where it was that you were a judge?
in Toronto.
Oh, okay. So my good Canuck friends.
Your good Canuck friends, many of my former colleagues agree with you. The criminalization of drug use is not the answer, and that
Yeah.
rehabilitation is where we should be spending our resources. And so I'm very interested in this documentary you're going to make about Portugal.
Well, and I will definitely get you more information. And well, Oregon in the United States tried to do the same thing, decriminalizing all drugs. However, all they did was slap a $100 fine on you. You pay the $100, you get out of going to any rehab, get out of doing any education, anything, and it failed miserably. Portugal, they changed their way of doing things. So you go before a drug and alcohol counselor, and they give you what's called an ASI, Addiction Severity Index. And they give you a list of questions. And then they talk about your drug of choice. Then they give you a number between 1 and 10. And then you go before two magistrates, at least two. One is a psychologist or psychiatrist, well versed in addiction. The second is a jurist, well versed in the law of 2001, which is when Portugal began their drug program. So then they talk to you for the first 15 minutes about your drug of choice, what it does to the body, what it does to the body, mind, emotions, and spirit, sexual problems, emotional problems, and legal problems. Then they take a look at your ASI index. 0 to 3, get out of here, kid. You bother me. Don't come back. If you're caught again in 5 years, you're going to have more problems. 4 to 7, you may have a problem. Here are the situations that we will give you: medically assisted treatment, inpatient treatment, outpatient treatment. You get to choose, and the government will pay 80% of the costs. The family will pay 20%. If the family is unable to pay the 20%, then they figure a way to get you into treatment. And you are to do this within 72 hours of being arrested. You go into this program. Then 7 to 10, you a mofo addict. Get your butt into treatment right now. It's never forced, never mandated, but highly suggested. And those that score 7 to 10 have usually always been in the program at least one time before. And again, the government will pay 80% of your treatment, and you and the family pay that 20%. And the situation is young people are not doing the drugs like, ooh, this is verboten, so I'm going to do it anyway. They do it out of curiosity, out of many other reasons, but even a cab driver understands what drugs do to people because of the 24 years that they have had this program in action in Portugal.
It's an amazing program. It's absolutely a blueprint for what should be happening elsewhere in the world. And I know I've heard you say in interviews that the rent that we pay for being on this earth is to be of service to others. And I want you to know that, boy, have you paid enough rent to live another 100 years. And I'm so honored to be able to tell you publicly that I support what you're doing, and I'm very proud of you for doing it. I'm really thrilled you're going to write a memoir, because you and Kathy Garver are the only two remaining cast members of Family Affair. She wrote one. Did you read it, The Surviving Cissy?
I've read parts of it. I think she's a friend of, well, let's just say that I love Kathy.
Good enough. Well, if you could go back and talk to the 7-year-old Johnny Whitaker right before he was about to become a big star on Family Affair, what would you say to him?
Make sure that your parents put $7,500 in Disney stock.
Amen. Amen. Well, I only have one more question for you, and it's this. When you look back at your life, your career, your struggles, the resilience you've learned to develop over the years, are you proud of how you've lived your life and what you've accomplished, John?
If we have 1 foot in yesterday and 1 foot in tomorrow, we're crapping on today. So I look back with fondness at everything that has happened. Grandfather has given me wonderful things. Native Americans call God grandfather, and I kind of like that. My God has given me a wonderful life. Am I where I want to be in my life right now, doing all of the things? No. But I've still got another 30, 40 years. And I look back with fondness, and I look forward with intrigue and excitement, and love being with me here and with you here today.
Well, John, it's been such a pleasure meeting you. Thank you for being such an important part of our childhoods. Thank you for everything you do to help and advocate for people struggling with substance abuse. And most of all, thank you so much for taking the time to appear on our show.
Thank you very much, Harvey. It's been a pleasure, and we do need to get back together, and I'm going to give you more information about Portugal.
I look forward to it. Our guest has been the amazing Johnny Whitaker. For more information about Mr. Whitaker, please visit his official website, johnnywhitaker.com. You can also follow him on Facebook and Instagram. And for more information about his nonprofit organization, please go to pasoporpaso.org. My name is Harvey Brownstone. Thank you all for joining us. See you next time. Thank you to my producers, Steve Silver, my managers, Rick Marcelli and Robin Bragg Marcelli of the Marcelli Company in Hollywood, my director of programming, Robert Monaghan, my editor, Isaiah Sharalampidis, and my entire team at the XPTV1 network in the UK.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out all the great interviews on the Harvey Brownstone Interviews YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when new videos are posted.